What's going on YouTube? I'm Drew. No, what? What's going on YouTube? What am I doing? Oh my, so impression video. First, why can't I do this? Why can't I just speak to the freaking... Hey guys,
Hey guys.
No. I think I'll just quit. I'm just not gonna do YouTube. This whole time I didn't even have the microphone on. Like, what's going on YouTube? I'm Drew and you're watching my very first unboxing / initial impressions video. First try. Okay, so why did I buy the A7iii in 2020? Well, for the past 2 or 3 years, I've been actually shooting on the Sony A6500, which has been a workhorse for me. All the videos up until this point that you see on YouTube on my channel have been shot with the Sony A6500. So in terms of the comparison between the A7iii and the A6500, the A7iii is definitely more of a photographer's camera than a videographer's camera. I do a lot of video, but I do want to start taking a lot more photos and kind of, you know, increasing my skill set in that department. And shooting on a full frame sensor, as well as having higher ISO limits and the camera body itself being able to handle higher ISOs with less noise. And what I mean by ISO, for those of you who don't know, ISO is just a measure of the sensitivity of the sensor in the camera. So basically, higher sensitivity is generally looked at as more favorable because with less light, you're able to do more or see more of the image. On top of that, we do also get a few improvements in this camera. Unfortunately, one of the things I was really trying to get in a camera was better video codecs in terms of resolution, in terms of frame rates, and in terms of color depth. And we really don't get a whole lot more in that department with the A7iii. The highest resolution and frame rate with the A7iii is 4K and 30 frames per second, which is exactly what you get on the A6500. And it shoots in an 8-bit color depth. So what I mean by 8-bit versus say 10-bit or 12-bit is the range of colors that the image is going to have. So basically, the more colors means smoother gradients and highlight roll off, smoother gradients in the skies when you're looking at a sunset. You know, you're looking at the sun transitioning to that sky blue. And you generally will get less banding in those images if you ever try to do drastic color correcting or anything like that. So making a decision to get the A7iii, given the other options out there, was a bit difficult, especially when you have cameras like the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K that shoots all the way up to 12-bit, 4K 60, I believe. And that camera is cheaper. It only costs about $1,300, albeit it does have a smaller sensor at Micro Four Thirds, but it's really a great camera for your dollar. And then you have the newer competitors like the Canon EOS R that also does 4K 60 for around the same price as the A7iii, and the Panasonic S1, which I think honestly is king of the mountain right now in terms of a video camera for the consumer. It does 4K 60 and 10-bit, I believe. Now the Canon EOS R and the Panasonic S1 are newer cameras, so it probably isn't fair to compare to the A7iii. But even if you compare the newer Sony Alpha cameras like the A7R4 and the A9 II, they all still cap out at 4K 30 and they all still shoot 8-bit, which really leads me to wonder why the prices of those cameras are so ridiculous. So this video isn't going to be a full-on review. It's mainly just going to be my initial impressions of the camera coming from the Sony A6500. Okay, so I know I said this was gonna be an unboxing, but I had already opened the box and I started playing around with the camera just a little bit. But there wasn't anything interesting in the box anyway. Pretty much you get the camera body itself, the battery, you get a USB cable, USB charger, the Sony Alpha neck strap, and some paperwork. That's pretty much it. What I would say though, is if you are thinking about picking up this camera, take a look at the options that they have on Amazon, B&H, and sites like Adorama, because they're running some pretty good package deals that include a lot of accessories like kit lenses, lens cleaning kits. Mine, for example, I got from B&H, and it came with a Manfrotto tripod and a carrying bag, like a shoulder bag. And they were pretty nice. They weren't, janky stuff. So yeah, take a look at those links. All right, so moving forward, we're just gonna get into my initial impressions about the camera itself. Right off the bat, holding the camera in your hand, you definitely feel the improved ergonomics from having this larger grip right here on the right-hand side. And that's housing the much larger Z-style battery. This is a very much welcomed improvement coming from the Sony A6500. Those batteries were just complete crap. Anytime I would go out on a shoot, I would always have to carry at least 4 batteries with me at any given time because they would just run out so fast. So having the larger battery and being able to have longer run times is definitely a much welcomed improvement with the Sony A7 III. So we'll just start from the back here, and then we'll go towards the top, and then anything else I notice we'll cover as well. The screen does definitely feel bigger as well. I'm not sure if it actually is, but it definitely looks larger and brighter. That was another gripe that I had with the A6500, was the screen was not bright at all, and shooting in broad daylight was pretty much, you were shooting blind. You were just hoping you were getting the shot, hoping you were getting it in focus, hoping it wasn't over or underexposed, but you really couldn't tell because once the sun hits the back of that glass, it's game over. So I'm hoping that this brighter screen, I would have less of that issue. Moving on to the rest of the back of the camera, we have a C3 button here, which I'm noticing is new. Previously on the A6500, we also had a C3 button, but it doubled as the trash can button, which now on the A7 III, the trash can button also doubles as a C4. Other than that, we have a familiar dial here that we also had on the A6500. We do have a new joystick here. What I'm guessing is this is going to come into play if you're ever doing shoots where you want to pick the focus area and you can move the focus point around with the joystick. We also have a much larger EVF here, which is now center located instead of being on the left. We have a record button right next to the EVF. And moving on to the top, right away you'll notice we have this additional exposure dial here. And we have another dial on the back right next to the exposure and on the front as well. And these are dials that are going to be used, for example, for adjusting exposure by adjusting the aperture and the shutter speed here. And then we have the familiar mode dial right here. One of the things though, I really would have liked to have seen a third custom option on the mode dial. We have 2 on the A7 III, but we also have 2 on the A6500. And then we have the 2 additional custom buttons here, C1 and C2. And that's really it. We have the hot shoe, which is in a similar location on the A6500. And that really takes care of the top here. Moving on to the I/O, this is really cool. We have dual SD card slots, which is nice. So, and you can run these in different ways. You can set these up so that what's being recorded on one card is also being backed up on the second card. That way, if you're doing a shoot and something happens, your SD card gets corrupted, you have a second card that would also be capturing all of your photos and videos. Or you could run it where once the storage is completed and filled up on one card, it begins to write on the other card. So that's pretty cool. Speaking of the slots themselves, you have a UHS 1 and a UHS 2 slot. And basically that just is designating the different write speeds. Currently, I don't have any UHS 2 SD cards, so I'll be looking to make that investment and taking advantage of the faster write speeds on the UHS 2. I also love this door. You have this little switch here and it just flaps open. That's really nice. I like that. But also having the SD cards on the side is much better. On the A6500, it actually was sharing a slot right next to the battery. And that posed a challenge, especially if you wanted to change SD cards while the camera is sitting on a tripod or while the camera is sitting on a gimbal. Having it on the side there is much more convenient. And then we have the flappy doors. We have the flappy doors here on the other side of the camera. Headphone jack, which is new in this camera. And we have a micro HDMI. I would love it if we could get a full size HDMI on these cameras. Obviously, I know that's a challenge with the real estate here, but micro HDMI is kind of a pain sometimes to work with. We have USB-C here, which I'll have to look into. I don't know if that's just gonna be for charging or if we'll actually be able to take advantage of that port for recording externally to an SSD or something like that. And then we have the micro USB here. And then the last port is a microphone jack over here. And then of course we have the beautiful 35mm full frame sensor right here on the front. And that's really it. So, like I said, I've had a little bit of time just to take a few pictures with this camera, and so far I like it. One of the main reasons why I got this camera was I did want to stick with the Sony system. I do already have a small lens collection for the E-mount, and I didn't want to have to get rid of those lenses, or I didn't want to buy a camera that wouldn't be able to take advantage of those lenses. And although my lens collection up until this point has largely been lenses designed for APS-C cameras, except for one, what's nice about the Sony A7 III is Sony has a feature called the Super 35 mode, where it actually crops in on the sensor, allowing you to use the APS-C style lenses on this camera. So that's nice. I've also gotten used to the Sony menu system. I know that's actually a point of contention for a lot of Sony Alpha users, is they complain about the menu system being too complicated and too deep. But what I like about the Sony menu is that it's very customizable. So you have, of course, the custom buttons here that you can set up, but you can also customize the function button menu, as well as create a page on the menu system that is just a list of the areas of the menu that you care about most. And so that allows for really customizing it and tailoring the menu system so that the camera fits your shooting style and is much more usable to you. So I kind of gotten used to that, and I wanted to stick with that. I didn't want to have to learn another menu system. I didn't want to have to purchase a whole new set of lenses or purchase adapters for my current lenses. And so given my options, I thought that the A7 III was the best, and I'm actually quite happy with this camera. So how do you end these videos? Thumbs up if you liked it, subs if you loved it.
Thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it.
I am not Dave 2D, no. No, but honestly, thanks for hanging out with me on my first initial impressions video. I am hoping to do more of these, more unboxings and more reviews. So if you do like what you see, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.